It was Halloween night, a time for tricks, treats, and terror. My friends and I, dressed in our carefully chosen costumes, roamed the streets with bags full of candy. The air was crisp, and the moon hung low, casting eerie shadows on the ground. We were a group of 6: me, Sarah, Mark, Emily, Josh, and Lily. Our laughter filled the night, a stark contrast to the haunting atmosphere around us. We had hit most of the houses in our neighborhood and were about to call it a night when Mark suggested we try the old Henderson place at the end of Maple Street. "Come on, guys, it's Halloween. Let's do something daring," he exclaimed. The Henderson place was notorious. Abandoned for years, it was the subject of countless urban legends. Some said it was haunted. Others claimed that a family was murdered there many years ago. We hesitated, but eventually gave in to the allure of adventure. As we approached the house, a sense of dread washed over me. The windows were boarded up and the paint was peeling off the walls. The garden was overgrown, and the whole place looked like it was decaying. "Are we sure about this?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with fear. "Come on, don't be a chicken," Josh taunted. We walked up the creaky steps and stood in front of the door. I reached out and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Just as we were about to leave, the door creaked open, revealing a dark hallway. "Trick or treat," I said hesitantly, peering into the darkness. Suddenly the lights flickered on, and we saw a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was a man, dressed in tattered clothes, his face hidden behind a grotesque mask. "Treat," he said, his voice distorted and chilling. He gestured for us to come in. Against our better judgment, we stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind us. "Welcome," the man said. "I've been expecting you." He led us into a room filled with Halloween decorations, skeletons, cobwebs, and carved pumpkins. But something was off. The skeletons looked too real, the cobwebs too thick. And then I saw it, a table in the corner covered with knives, saws, and other surgical instruments, all stained with dried blood. My heart sank as the man pulled off his mask, revealing a twisted, sadistic smile. "You wanted a treat, didn't you? Well, you're in for a real treat now." Before we could react, he lunged at us with a knife. We scattered, screaming, trying to find a way out. Mark and Sarah managed to break a window and jumped out, but the rest of us weren't so lucky. The man grabbed Emily and dragged her to the table. What happened next was a blur of screams, blood, and terror. He was no longer a man. He was a monster, reveling in his sadistic pleasure. Somehow, Josh and I managed to overpower him, knocking him unconscious with a heavy vase. We grabbed Lily, who was in a state of shock, and ran out of the house, not stopping until we reached the safety of our homes. The police arrived shortly after, arresting the man and discovering the horrifying truth. He was a serial killer, responsible for the disappearance of several people over the years. The skeletons were real. They were his previous victims. We survived that night, but at a terrible cost. Emily didn't make it, and the rest of us were left scarred, both physically and emotionally. Halloween is no longer a time for tricks and treats for us. It's a grim reminder of the night our lives changed forever. The man was sentenced to life in prison, but the horror he inflicted lingers on. And every Halloween, as children roam the streets in search of candy, I can't help but wonder how many more monsters are out there, waiting for their next treat.
It was the weekend before Halloween and the air was thick with anticipation. My best friend Alex and I decided to visit the Abyss, a haunted house attraction that had just opened. It was supposed to be the scariest in the state, rivaling even Field of Screams and Jason's Woods. We arrived at the venue, our hearts pounding with excitement and a hint of fear. The place looked incredible, complete with fog machines, eerie lighting, and actors dressed as ghouls and monsters. We bought our tickets and joined the queue, our eyes wide with anticipation. Finally, it was our turn. We stepped into the dark entrance and the door slammed shut behind us. The atmosphere was electric, filled with screams and unsettling sounds. We navigated through narrow hallways, dodging zombies and escaping from witches. It was thrilling, and we were having the time of our lives. But then, we reached a room that was different from the others. It was pitch black, and the air was thick with an unidentifiable foul smell. "This is new," Alex whispered, gripping my arm. Suddenly, the lights flickered on, revealing a room filled with lifelike mannequins posed in grotesque positions. They looked disturbingly real, their eyes glassy and vacant. "Wow, they went all out with this one," I said, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that had settled in my stomach. Just then, one of the mannequins moved. Not a mechanical movement, but a fluid, human-like motion. It turned its head and looked straight at us, its eyes no longer vacant but filled with malevolent intent. "Did you see that?" Alex stammered, his voice tinged with genuine fear. Before we could react, the room plunged into darkness again. We heard shuffling sounds, whispers, and then something touched my arm. It was cold, clammy, and decidedly human. I screamed, and the lights came back on. The mannequins were gone, replaced by an empty room with a single door at the end. We ran, our hearts pounding, and burst through the door, finding ourselves back in the main hall. We looked at each other, our faces pale and eyes wide with terror. "Was that part of the attraction?" Alex asked, his voice shaky. "I don't know, but I don't want to find out," I replied, pulling him toward the exit. As we left, I glanced back and saw one of the actors remove his mask. It was the same face that had looked at us in that room, but now it was twisted into a sinister smile. Our eyes met, and a shiver ran down my spine. This was no ordinary haunted house. It was a gateway to something far more terrifying. We later found out that the Abyss was shut down due to technical difficulties. Rumors circulated that they had gone too far, incorporating elements that were not just frightening, but dangerous. But Alex and I knew the truth. It wasn't a malfunction or an accident. It was something darker, something that defied explanation. To this day, we avoid haunted house attractions, wary of what lies behind their facades. And every Halloween, as people flock to these places in search of thrills, we can't help but wonder how many of them come face to face with real horrors, hidden behind the mask of entertainment.
The air was thick with the scent of decaying leaves and damp earth, a telltale sign that autumn had arrived. I had just moved into an old Victorian house, its creaky floors and high ceilings filled with the echoes of its past. The locals called it the Hollow House, a name that sent shivers down my spine, but also piqued my curiosity. I spent the first few days unpacking and settling in, trying to make the old house feel like home. But something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it was as if the walls were watching me, their ancient eyes never blinking. On the fifth night, I stumbled upon a hidden door in the basement. It was concealed behind a dusty bookshelf filled with old tomes and journals. My heart pounded as I pushed the bookshelf aside, revealing a door with a rusty padlock. I hesitated for a moment, but curiosity got the better of me. I fetched a hammer and broke the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room. The air was foul, filled with the smell of mildew and something more sinister. I switched on the light and gasped. The room was filled with photographs, newspaper clippings, and maps. Each photograph was of a different person, their eyes crossed out with red ink. The newspaper clippings were all about missing persons, and the maps had locations marked in red. My hands trembled as I picked up a journal from the table. The first entry read, "The thrill of the hunt is what keeps me alive." These pathetic souls never see it coming. They think they're safe, but they're not. I am the predator, and they are my prey. I dropped the journal, my heart pounding in my chest. I realized that I was standing in the lair of a serial killer, one who had never been caught. The room felt colder, the walls closing in on me. I ran upstairs, locked all the doors, and called the police. The investigation that followed was intense. The police confirmed that the house was previously owned by a man who had disappeared years ago, a prime suspect in a series of unsolved murders. They collected all the evidence, but the man was never found. I moved out of the house immediately, but the memories still haunt me. Every creak of the floor, every rustle of the leaves sends chills down my spine. I often wonder if the predator is still out there, watching, waiting for his next prey. And the most terrifying thought of all, Was I chosen to be his next victim? The hollow house remains empty, its walls still filled with the echoes of its dark past. And as the leaves turn brown and the air grows cold, I can't help but wonder how many more houses like it exist, hiding their terrible secrets, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to unlock their doors.